going to hit Instagram too. Okay.
Hopefully I can, well, I hit go live and it decided not to, I think.
I know. Let's see.
Rude. Now you get a new key.
Oh, there we go. It should work now.
Yeah, but it didn't on mine, so I don't know what to do.
Give it a moment. It just means like.
Do you think it has to load?
Yeah.
If we're just on yours, that's fine, as long as yours is working. By the way, to everybody who's watching live, hey.
We are trying something new.
Mars and Pisces confusion over here. I don't think mine's going to work. I think it's because I set it up too early and it probably gave up on me, which you Instagram. It says check mark. So if it is working, great. It's just not showing me that.
I'm going to hop in the IG live and I'm just actually going to put a note real quick to let everyone know.
Yep. Yeah, it says can't post to Instagram for me, or no comments to Instagram. So I'm going to see what we're doing on Instagram. To anybody who is watching right now, welcome to Ask Me Astros. This is the live broadcast between now. Vivi, you are live, which is great. I do not think I am, but that's okay because I can see me on yours. This is great. And I'm going to share this to, I thought I could share it to like my stories so people who are following me can actually do this. Guess not. But
do you want to try again?
Nope, it's okay. I sent it to at least the person I know that is going to be wanting to watch this. So that's what's hopefully the most important thing. But yeah, so cool. We'll just go with it. And I will kind of follow along on your live here to be able to make sure we do keep up with some of the comments.
Hello, everyone who's joining us. And this is hilarious.
Hi, Gabe.
You're gonna oh, hi, Gabe. I think I can actually, you know what? You know what, KristaLyn? Real quick. Can you try the Instagram again?
I'm on your Instagram now.
Oh no, your Instagram. If you just go to edit the streams up in StreamYard, you could probably just do it again because it's giving me the option to add yours, but you could probably just do it yourself.
Okay.
And while you do that,
I don't know, man. It's a lot of I don't know in this one. Perfect. On the upside of Mercury's presence in Pisces, I am having a really good time coming up with ideas for my books. So there's that. Stream key. If I go in here and edit this.
Mercury and Pisces, I'm having a good time. Watch everyone feel really confused and just like living in the fact that I live here all the time. These are my waters. I know how to navigate them. So welcome to the confusion, everyone. Yeah, so we are
I'm not the host.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We are trying a new thing this week.
Yeah. So it's not going to be on both of our Instagrams because I'm not the host of the stream, I guess, even though it let me connect it, wouldn't let me do it again. So we'll figure that out for a later time. But let's get into the broadcast so we, can give the value of the video instead of people watching us play around with technology.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Hello.
Awesome. So hello, everybody. This is Ask Me Astros for Pisces season, which is occurring in February of 2024. We are so excited to see you. My name is KristaLyn, and this is Vivi. And today we're going to be going through a chart that asked a really great question about career as well as angles. So we've got some amazing quotes from traditional texts and resources and our own analyses for this.
I'm ready.
Yeah. So, Vivi, did you want to start out with some current astrology, or do we want to dive straight into the natal chart, or how do you want to go?
Let's talk about this current moment. I feel like we are just kind of like it's like in between a rock and a hard place, but I think that's too negative.
Yeah.
But it came to my mind this early morning. It's been I feel like with all the sort of everything speaking of this natal chart, which they've been probably feeling it, right? Like this whole Aquarius conversation that's been happening in the sky. We just had a full moon that's felt sort of melancholy. I will say, I'm going to quote you earlier last week we were talking, and I loved before Mercury went into Pisces and sort of the sun dipped into Pisces. I love that you sort of explained the current astrology as I'm going to paraphrase here, just like mental overload
Yeah.
followed by meltdown in Pisces. And I think that like that pretty much to me has like summed it up.
And I will say I was digging my own ditch there because I did end up having that experience later in the week. As soon as Mercury came into Pisces, I got a
Yeah.
message that sent me into sort of like a depressive episode for a full-on day. And I was able to be like, Mercury is in Pisces. This kind of makes sense. Plus, we've got the full moon happening, which Mercury rules. Like, I get it. So it really allowed me to hold space to just feel those feelings. But for
Yeah.
anybody else out there who was feeling that too, yeah, it was definitely, it was the recovery after meltdown kind of moment.
Totally. And I know a few people, I mean, that helped. I mean, I always live in meltdown stage. So what's new?
It's a hard thing to grapple with. Yeah.
But that being said, I do know a few people like that really resonated with. And I think just knowing that, um, you know, and that's the beauty of astrology, right? Is sometimes like understanding this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We are here. This will pass. But I know a few other people this week who also had like little meltdown moments or moments of like thinking about Mercury and Pisces. I think too, like confusion. Sometimes, you know, when we think about um what Mercury and Pisces is, I think there's a level of just like over imagination. I say over imagination because imagination is a really beautiful thing, right? To be able to like envision scenarios and come up with ideas, and that's all really beautiful. But I think sometimes with Mercury and Pisces, it's the like not always acting, and I say this as a native of Mercury and Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
not always acting out of facts, but feelings. It's like that, like something happens, and then suddenly you've created an entire story, like a backstory that may or may not be true. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I don't know how it is for everybody else, but I'm just imagining this is a season where it might be good to like take a deep breath and actually like question the validity of things before you just
Mm-hmm.
react.
Yeah, like actually interview your feelings. It made me think of you, Vivi,
Oh, I like
because I'm reading a book right now on, I think it's the language of emotions.
that. Okay.
And I thought, okay, you're going to teach me about emotions, which is every modality I've ever studied. But it's this person who started out kind of healing emotional trauma, then got really into spirituality because it supported dissociative
Mm,
techniques so much, and then realized how that's not that helpful because it negates your emotions, and your emotions are your psyche trying to cope with things. And so she
yeah.
came back around to sort of integrate not only just spirituality and emotional stuff, but the healing and the psychotherapy of it. It reminded me a little bit about Gabe when Gabe explained, how some people can meditate a little bit too hard and the dissociation can sort of unanchor
Yeah.
you. And this person really goes through it. And then another part of the book is sort of an encyclopedia of what emotions are trying to tell you and like what lies underneath each of them. And it made me think of you with your more therapeutic pursuits these days.
Oh, that's beautiful. What is this book called?
I think it's called The Language of Emotion, but I will
Okay.
send you the title and the author because I've got it in the other room. I'm highlighting everything, and I'm highlighting it in pink because it should be happy and like good no matter what emotions we're talking about.
I love that. I love that. And I think this is you know, kind of taking a deep dive and as we're about to approach this chart, right? I think this kind of
Mhm.
brings up something that I was this person whose chart we're about to look at asked about matters of career, right? Of
Yeah.
like, where do I look at for it? Where do I look in the chart to see, what I'm supposed to be doing in life? And I think this brings up the bigger question. Well, two, one is what do you want to do? That's
Mhm.
always number one.
Mhm.
But number two, right? Like, how does this person function as a human? What are their needs, right? And so, like, we can look to a chart and say, okay, maybe you'd have different inclinations for XYZ career, but like, what do you need to nourish yourself? Like, how do you
Mhm.
process emotion? Do you need alone time? Um, all of that. So I think this
Yeah.
is a really great segue into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, a lot of this just really resonating with the introspection and I want to say like not the interview of emotion, but the acknowledgement of emotions as almost little, I like to think of emotions kind of like fairies. They're there, they're have their own sort of consciousness and their own purposes. And so I think really going into this is very attuned to the moment of the Mercury and Pisces that we've got going on.
I just want to say, like, I'm really going to sit on that for a moment. This idea of interviewing your
Mhm.
emotion is
Yeah.
really great, right? And I think that it brings up something for me um, that might be extra relevant during this Mercury and Pisces season is separating emotion from story,
Mhm.
right? So part of that process is how do I feel, right? Like what emotions am I feeling? Am I feeling
Mhm.
sad? Am I feeling, lonely, surprised, whatever, right? Like just
Yeah.
how am I feeling? And really coming to terms with that. And then start to go, okay, now what is happening in this situation? Because I think
Mhm.
oftentimes we don't actually ask ourselves what we're feeling to interview it. And
Mhm.
then we create stories. Again, I say we, me, but I think, maybe we might all have a tendency to do this in some areas of our life. And then there's we can build a whole story. But if we don't actually know what we're thinking, right? It could just be like, I've built a story that someone's really angry at me. But the truth is I'm hungry and I
Mhm.
don't know what's going on.
Yep. Yeah. I use the, it's a Brene Brown technique of the story I'm telling myself is this. Can you let me know if that's a true story or if I've got it wrong? And so that's how I'll kind of broach conversations with people when I'm sending myself into a spiral and be like, I've told myself the story that this is what's happening. And I don't know if it's a true story. And then they can be like, oh, no, it's not that at all. Or they can say, well, actually, yeah, but there's more to the story. And then you get the clarity you need, and then you can honor the emotions. And it's a really great process.
Oh, I love that. And that process with other people, but also maybe like
Mhm.
with yourself too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All the time. Yeah. If I feel a feeling, I've gotten to the point where I can be like, I have a feeling. What is this feeling? How would I name this feeling? What is this feeling telling me and where does it come from? What thought gave birth to this feeling? It goes into a huge thing.
No, finishing that up in this sort of Mercury and Pisces conversation, I was
Mhm.
thinking about I can't remember. It was a friend of ours, another astrologer and magician, who was saying that one of the ways to remediate for Mercury and Pisces is to essentially like write lies, right? Because if you think about it, right, like our ability to create fiction is to tell
Mhm.
lies, is to imagine something that's not there. And
Mhm.
so this idea of kind of like, oh, like what lies am I telling myself? Or even as a way, just thinking that this month could be a good way to like actually maybe get that out by doing some fiction writing
Yeah. Which
or
is
poetry.
like story of my life. But yeah, that's a really great perspective. And then like what lies can you tell yourself that you'd like to have them become truth? Not all lies are bad. It's called fake it till you
Yeah.
make it, isn't it?
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So just really playing with that notion. Am I telling myself good lies or am I telling
Yeah.
myself lies that hurt me?
Yeah. So on
Mm,
that note, do you want me to go ahead and share the chart that we're looking at for this month?
yes, please.
Okay.
Because we all know how.
Um, Yeah, let me see if I can make it do the thing I want it to do. Do the thing. Ta-da! Okay, cool.
I'm just checking
So
in.
it is there, it just needs to be added to the stream.
Okay, add string.
Oh
Perfect.
yeah, there it is. Cool. So this is the chart we are looking at, and because we're doing this awesome thing, yeah, cool, whatever I do on my screen, you'll be able to see as well. I'm just checking in really quickly. Okay, we're doing good on comments on Instagram as well. Hi, guys. Um, so this is
Do
the
you wanna say
chart we're
something
looking.
about Luna, by the way? Before you sorry. I always
Oh,
get
yeah, sure.
excited.
I do really love Luna, and as you can see, Luna's had some updates recently. I'm very much looking forward to Luna getting perfections, which I hear is on the horizon, and I'm stoked. Luna is really great, especially when you're displaying charts because you can narrow things down. Like we're talking about first the ascendant. Ta-da! I've cleared everything. Oh wow, my phone even went off. I've cleared everything except the ascendant and those things that are closely connected to it. And there are settings
Yeah.
you can use to make that more your style. If we're going to talk about the 10th house, I can't narrow down the 10th house, but I can narrow down the MC. And I can, go to the
Oh.
ruler of the MC. And
Oh,
then
I love it.
you can get all of the situation of what's going on with that. My very favorite thing, this is what I use for it the most, is when I bring up, let's say I bring up a transit bi-wheel. So then we'll have, because we know that Mars is the ruler of the 10th house, which is an active house for this person, but also has a lot to do with career and visibility in the chart, which we'll get into later. Mars is currently in Aquarius. So I go over to Aquarius, and if I double tap on Mars or double click, I can do this event navigator and say direction changes, and it'll tell me when Mars is going retrograde next. And if I click on that, it'll actually take me to the chart. That's my favorite feature. You can do the same thing with sign transits. So like we can see when Mars is going to transit into Pisces, and you can go to the chart for that. It's very lovely. It's very beginner friendly, but it's also got a lot of good tools just for reference and reminders for people who have been doing astrology for a while.
You know, I always forget about this, and this is great for people who don't want to invest in software, right? Because it's a monthly fee.
Yeah, it's a subscription, and if people are interested, they can either message you or message me. I've got a 10% off thing that I can make it even more cost affordable. I post it on my videos every other week on YouTube as well, but it is nice. The person who does it his name is Kevin. I work with him closely. I'm trying to help him with the more traditional Hellenistic implementations, and he really cares. And the interface is probably the smoothest I've worked with in a program. I'm just looking forward to actually getting it to do traditional stuff more, because that's what I do. So it's a selfish desire, but it's on its way.
Yes, and thank you. Pattern scribes, it's definitely worth it. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna hop on that train too, because I always forget people are looking. Okay.
Yeah. So now we're back
Now
to the natal chart. Yeah. So this person, I actually have their original question, if you would like me to read it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this person said, most of my life, I've had the impression as a sun sign Sagittarius was my main personality. But after looking harder, I find my Aquarius rising might be a better place for me to put my focus. Also, the worksheet I looked at from KristaLyn Sacred Spaces meetup, I remembered one of my ruling planets was Saturn. But again, that chart was done for me by a family member, not by me. So apparently this person got a chart done a while ago, realized their Aquarius rising, saw my worksheet, and realized Saturn was the helmsman of their chart. The question this person has is, what part of the chart should I look to when wanting to help guide my stuff into the right career path, rising, sun, or moon? Also, I'm not an astrologer. Please help. So that was from the person who submitted to us this time. And so I went ahead and I cast their chart, and they are an Aquarius rising, which would make Saturn their helmsman here. So that's what they were talking about here. And they were asking rising and sun and moon, which one should they do for career? Now, we know, and this is where I might tie in the one quote that I pulled from Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology book. We know as astrologers that when we're looking at the natal promise of career, we would look first to probably the 10th house / MC, depending on what house system you're using, because the MC would be in the 10th house for more quadrant systems. But for the whole sign, you can see the MC is floating outside in the 11th house. So that's kind of where we're starting here. What do you think, Vivi?
Well, is sort of joking, but being completely serious, right? When it comes, my first answer is all of them, right? Like, I mean, this is the thing we have to remember, right? This is a birth chart. And so we're going to look to different planets to give us different pieces of information about ourselves, right? So yes, absolutely. When we want to look to how a native makes money, what their work in the world is, we look to particular areas of the chart. But we both know that, you know, you can't enter a career without your physical body, right? The ascendant and the ascendant ruler.
Yeah.
Or your spirit, or right? Like, so we really do need to look at all of them. And I think I've been thinking about this. This is sort of a larger question this week. You know, I think, to me, one of the greatest tools of astrology, or benefits of, right, is that, you know, I think about Jason Holly's work and this sort of the menagerie of animals, right? And thinking about all of these different parts of us that want to speak. And there's the astrology chart. and this is more of a modern perspective, can show us different stories that are happening within us. And we, the challenge is, how do we greet all of those? Well, a
Mhm.
lot of them are in conflict. And we'll get to some of that today in the chart.
Mhm.
But yes, the answer is all of them.
Yeah. You are your whole chart. And I think that's a really great point, is to always reemphasize that the chart does not make the person. The person embodies and expresses the chart. If you never knew what
Mhm.
your chart was and you never knew you were an Aquarius rising, you would still be someone who goes throughout the world expressing all of the traits that we would be able to validate using your chart. Um, so it's not like you have to look at your chart and be like, oh no, I'm terrible at expressing all of those placements in my 12th house. No, you're not. You would do it without trying, because it's who you are, and that's great. So again, who you are also contributes to what you do in the world, to what your passions are, to how people know you, to how you're known in the population, which is, it's funny to me, in a modern context, that our
Mm.
reputation and our career get put in the same place, because in the era of social media, your reputation can be completely separate from your career. So I think we're coming into a time where the 10th house, 6th house differentiation is becoming even more and more discreet. Um, so it's been interesting to me, of like, I like Demetra's way of referencing the 10th house. It's your life's work, not necessarily your
Mhm.
career, because our definition in modern times of career has come to be the thing that you do long term that makes you money. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily always the same as your life's work and what you have a reputation for, like what you'd be known for.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, this is sort of related to that, but I don't know, I was looking at Gertrude Stein's chart recently, right? And
Mhm.
someone who's very famous has a really interesting natal promise. But most of her planets are, well, they're not, she doesn't have anything in the 10th. You'd think you'd see something really visible, which again is sort of building off of that, is that to look to a chart, right? We all have 10th houses, we all have places of career, of reputation, but really getting into the intricate story. Sometimes
Mhm.
some of us do that from the the corners of our own homes, which is interesting thinking about too, this idea of like reputation and the work in the world, and the idea of
Mhm.
like the internet and
Yeah.
how we're physically in the world.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
It's a different thing. Yeah.
yeah, where would you like to start with this?
I think the place I would start is talking about the natal promise. I do want to get into some timing later, because the fact that this person is feeling compelled to ask this question now is right on with their
Mhm.
progressions, with their perfections, with a lot of stuff. So I want to really affirm for this person, you are asking the right question at the right time, and we're going to tell you why. But we want to start with the natal chart and the natal promise. And I'd kind of like to, just almost in an educational way, go into the 10th house and even the midheaven and their rulers, and sort of referencing the condition of the ruler of these places where you would sort of default look to, and see
Yeah.
how that kind of shapes the nuance, because there's so many layers we get here with that floating midheaven being in the 11th house, that gives more to what we get to talk about as far as this career. And I do, when we were talking about our notes before we even jumped on, we did bring in the ascendant and we did bring in the 12th house, and you're right, we synthesized the whole chart into knowing this about the person and what they likely need. How does that go into a career that also suits what's fulfilling for them, based on the likelihood of the themes of 10th house or so on.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so okay. I'm excited. I'm seeing something in the chart that I wasn't seeing before. So,
Yeah, you want to share it?
well, I was just seeing how to jump here. I was seeing a relation between the ruler of the midheaven and the ruler of the 10th, but
Mhm.
I know. Actually, should we just say something real quick about the sun, moon, rising, just really quickly about this natal promise before we jump into the midheaven stuff?
Yeah, sure. Was there something you wanted to
Okay.
say, or do you want me to kind of lead off?
Well, okay. I'm going to jump off to say that for those who don't know, when we talk about the helmsman, right, we look at
Mhm.
the ascendant, which in this case is Aquarius rising, and then we look to where the ruler of the ascendant is, and that's what we call the helmsman.
Ascendant.
And so that is Saturn ruling Aquarius in the 12th house. And so, right, already we're sort of situated for, I think, of Aquarius rising. There's a bit of the sort of outsider, inventive, more,
Mhm.
it's a fixed air sign, right? And so there's
Mhm.
sort of a mental quality to this. Saturn, though, in the 12th, Saturn we know is both in its joy and it's strong and in its own domicile. Um, but I think, and I love your thoughts, Saturn, the ruler of the ascendant in the 12th, can sometimes feel, I think of it as a late bloomer signature, right? Like
Mhm.
you can't necessarily see where you're going. Um, Sometimes it
Yeah.
takes longer for things, like I feel like the life to unfold.
Mhm. I agree with that, and another thing that I would add is Saturn by condition, we don't have another thing that Luna is getting ready to implement is terms
Yeah.
and decans and the ways that we
Okay.
break up signs into smaller sections, but I have AstroSeek pulled up on another window, so I checked really quickly. Saturn is even the ruler of their own term in this. So
Oh,
Saturn, even though is not the, malefic, out of sec malefic or anything like that, is the ruler of the ascendant and is very quite strong
mhm.
by essential dignity, at least. And so I think what you're saying, all of those things is like Saturn is very much at the helm,
Yeah.
tight grip, probably white knuckling at the helm because they have all the resources they need, but they are in that 12th house, which is averse to the helm. So what we're looking at is the ascendant here, this first house. It's kind of like Rick Levine said this to us when you're driving a car, you
Yeah.
can't see out of certain blind spots. And so there are houses that are kind of considered blind spots. If the first house is your windshield, then the 12th house is that front corner blind spot that you would have, which is one of the ways that we can describe an aversion or a sign that's an aversion to the
Mhm.
ascendant in the chart. So it's very hard to access or consciously be aware of things that are happening in the 12th house, and Saturn is there. And so this person has probably done a lot of conscious self undoing being one of the themes referenced by the 12th house. So when we think about conscious self undoing, that's probably interviewing your feelings and studying
Yeah.
yourself and really getting to know yourself on a subconscious level. And I would imagine this person did a good job of that and probably has a very good control over their emotions and a good control over who they are and how they're reacting. And it's maybe not the most spontaneous, but is very good at being present with themselves, whether that is from healthy expressions or things that have taught them that way through challenge. It's a trait that I would see as having a possible skill that they've developed through life experience. And also when we think about the expression of the timing of the life, you're right again that I would agree that it's
Yeah.
probably something Saturn being super slow, the slowest of the traditional planets, tends to say, yeah, it's going to happen later in life. At least in this case, Saturn is also visible, moving direct, and has those things going for it. So this is a very well supported Saturn, but it doesn't make a slow person less slow person. Like in that case, Saturn has the pace that Saturn is known for being expressed as father time in a lot of situations.
Absolutely. Just think about two things. One, it's a fixed rising at Saturn, like fixed, and I think there's a tendency to, with fixed, wanting to create routines and patterns
Yep.
that work. And
Mhm.
thinking about it's ruled by Saturn in Capricorn, which wants to. I can read a little quote here later, but it wants to do things slowly, methodically, right? And so there's something, and Mercury's there too. I would wonder if this person has maybe struggled a little bit with depression or melancholy, right? Because
Mhm.
that could be a heaviness. And seeing the fire signatures in this chart, I kind of wonder if this person's in a position where they're just like, part of them is very impatient, like, "Let's go
Mhm.
now." Um, but at the same time, there's that sense of, like, building slow and steady, and I think you
Mhm.
see this a lot. Yes, 12th house, but then the Saturn signature as well is this person, maybe they don't really feel secure in their like, or they feel they aren't seeing the results they want in their career till maybe even after something like the second nodal return, 37, right, 38, closer mid to mid age. Not to say that this person's not going to see big moments in their career, but it might be one of those, this feels like a signature of like gets better with age.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that ages well. So
Yeah.
that's something that is like, because I think as a society, if something takes a long time, we immediately think that's a bad thing. But this is something that builds on itself, and this is consistent, and this is the reward that you get for the consistency and all those things. It is a payoff. And I agree with that. And I really like that you're also bringing in the whole fire expressions, because the sun is in Sagittarius. That is not something that we can ignore, because the sun is just like the sun gives energy to us by light. It gives energy to our chart as well. It kind of shows where the energy comes from, where that spark is. And so the sun, believe it or not, is the indicator of spirit in the chart, whereas the moon is the body. Sometimes, we kind of get those backwards, which is totally easy to do when we consider the moon being very intuitive. But the sun is the spirit. So it's what lights you up and kind of what you're almost compelled towards in life. The fact that the sun is co-present with the midheaven in Sagittarius in the 11th house, no less, which is quite nice because it is the house of good spirit and, good fortune, shows that maybe this person has had things show up when needed. One thing I've noticed about Sagittarius is it may not be like, oh, I know exactly where I'm going and I have my path to get there, whatever. It's like, nope, you need this now. Here it is. See you when you need something else. It'll be there. Don't worry. There's a level of faith you have to have with Sagittarius. As someone who has Sagittarius in the second house, I have recognized this a lot. The resources are there when you need them. And then before that, you just have to believe they're going to be there. So I think opportunities probably arise when needed for this person. And because they've been so steadfast in who they are and they know themselves probably quite well, they can follow that impulse knowing that they've built a foundation to back them up in case something else comes up too. They've got those backup plans, especially with the Aquarius. The Aquarius rising is going to have plan F. It's going to have these strategies of like, if this happens and if this happens and if this happens, I know what I'm going to do. And I have all my little plans of like what's going to happen if that situation occurs.
Absolutely. And also thinking about the 11th house, the house of a good spirit, also the house of, as what the astrologer Mickey Pellerano once said, you're friends with money, right? Or, friends with resources. There is the socialness of the 11th house. And so it's interesting thinking about maybe there's part of this person, a conflict. I'd be curious to know if there's an inner conflict around wanting to be self-sufficient, right? Even the Aquarius rising, want to be the person who's looking out for others, wanting to feel like a level of control, right? Saturn. But then also having to release to the fact that they have people around them that want to like help them out, care for them, right? It's like when, forgetting the fact that you step outside and maybe some of your greatest gifts in life have actually not come through your own work. I mean, yes, but also maybe just coming from like you step into a room and you meet some amazing people, right? So it does, and also too, thinking about that Jupiter on the 7th. So it does feel like maybe there's a little bit of a conversation between I can do it all myself and actually no, my best moments come when I'm getting the support of those around me.
And I think that also plays into when we look at the ruler of the midheaven and of the sun, Jupiter being in the 7th house. So this would be the other, and like who inspires you and who perhaps are you the one inspiring, because we have this Aquarius rising opposite the Leo. So this shows me someone who's very good at shining a light on others. And maybe they're not the most excited to be center stage themselves, though there's probably a certain allure to it. I just realized you can't see me using my mouse as a thing. So we're looking at Aquarius saying, I don't need to necessarily be center stage. 7th house Leo saying, I can shine the light on other people. And then this 11th house saying, I am a really good backup dancer though, essentially.
A backup dancer. And also, right, I would say that, it's interesting thinking about this. I wouldn't be so quick to say that this person can't be their own lead and we're all our lead in certain places. And I say that because I think sometimes the tricky part of the 7th house is that is actually part of us, but sometimes it's something that we attribute to it. We can sometimes give our 7th
Mhm.
house to our partners, and I would be careful of
Mhm.
that in this chart with especially Jupiter in Leo in the 7th, right? Um, I know we're talking about career, but something I would just for the native's life, right? I would be careful
Mhm.
to see, are you the kind of person that's you actually want to take up more space. You want to sort of be seen with that sun, that very visible sun in the 11th, but maybe you're attracting friends, partners that kind of like suck up the energy because you don't own that for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson for a lot of people with Saturnian placements. It's like, I know, especially Aquarius, I know you're giving a lot of space to others, but in doing that, are you giving yourself the allotted space that you want to? Like, take up your space and then notice that you might have some left over and then use that with other people. But don't give other people space and then fill in what's left for yourself. It's a great
Mhm.
option. Great. I'm looking at our Instagram comments as well. Um, so yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, Now should we get into this? Okay, so we talked a little bit about um the 12th house. We talked a little bit about the sun. Should we take a dive into this moon, right? And that kind of brings us to the 10th house. And then
Mhm.
we can start the like 10th house midheaven conversation.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I'm gonna jump a little bit, when
Yeah.
I do this conversation because we were talking about rulerships a little bit earlier. The moon, interestingly enough, is in the natal chart, she's balsamic. In by
Hmm.
progression, and I do wanna bring in a little bit about that. Secondary progress moon is actually crescent, so this person in life right now is going through an emergence of coming into some new interests,
Yeah.
and that is happening in Aquarius for them. So just, to kind of bring that in, that this person is kind of emerging into a new awareness of self. So it's, again, really cool that they're studying themselves using that
Yeah.
Saturn in Cap by going into astrology a bit. I'm really excited that they'll be able to have a reading with both of us individually so
Yeah.
they can get a lot of research on that. The moon is considered, and I share this moon, so there's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but the moon is considered to be in her fall in the 10th house. And so we see that opposite the ruler of the 10th, who is Mercury in his detriment and retrograde at the anaretic degree of Taurus. And so we're
Wait,
seeing like
wait. Mercury.
ruler of the 10th
Mars?
house is Mars. I said Mercury, didn't I? I meant
You
Mars.
did. I was like,
I was looking
I
at
know.
Mars. I was talking about Mars. I said Mercury. That's yeah. Gee, Mercury is going to be my time lord after May, and I think he's just stepping in early. It's been rough. Anyway, thank you for helping me with that. Yeah, so we
Okay,
have
Pisces, I
Mars.
live there.
Yeah, I live there, yeah.
I got you. I've got your back. I know these
Yeah,
waters.
thank you. Yeah, so Mars is at the anaretic degree, retrograde, Taurus, in detriment, opposite the moon, within and mutually applying because the moon's moving forward, Mars is moving backward. So they're within those
Mhm.
3 degrees. There is a certain level of like maltreatment here. Mars is the out of sec malefic of the chart. So we've got Mars having a lot to say, but not really having the resources he wants to do, not even the stage to say it because he's in the fourth. He's literally opposite of the stage. He's probably in the mezzanine. So it's an interesting dichotomy to pull into this because we've said all these things about career based on sort of sign and certain other placements, and then how able is this person? What resources do they have to actually make that happen? um, and when we were talking about the moon, one of the things you and I had discussed before we jumped on was how perhaps this person uses a certain stage in their life or reputation to express emotions in a way that maybe they don't feel as intricately like one-on-one, but a stage or a space where they can embody another character or something will give them that ability to express emotions in a different way that actually does help them process.
Absolutely. And, when we look at aspects, right? We're looking at the moon here. We're looking at Mars and right, like to sort of reframe or rephrase what you said, right? Like these planets are struggling a bit, right? The moon has a hard time in the, poisonous waters of Scorpio and
Mhm.
Mars, right? Wanting, I think Mars and Taurus is a bit of a scorched earth feel.
Yeah.
And so if I was to maybe translate this into a question, it feels like there's definitely a story here between home, right? Maybe some early experiences and how they see themselves in the world, right? Like the 10th
Mhm.
house is like literally the house of reputation, how we're seen with our moon, right? Our feelings, our body, right? I'm wondering here, it kind of reads as maybe there's like some work to do, and maybe they've done this work already around
Yeah.
confidence, right? Like I'm reading it that Mars in the fourth, also ruling that 10th, maybe growing up, there was someone who was kind of harsh, whether it was a
Mhm.
family member or friends, and there was a little bit of like, you can't do this, or there was a little bit of even like violence. It just feels like there's some home story. I don't know what this is, right?
Mhm.
That maybe is kind of poking at their, maybe feeling like they can't. It looks like a little bit of a pain on that moon. And again, reads as
Yeah.
a little bit of maybe there's some issues around confidence.
Yeah. Well, and it might be safer to express emotions outside of the home or outside of the self
Mm,
even, which,
yes.
a lot of actors have that. They'll bring in either method acting or something like that, and
Yeah.
they can really process feelings by using the analog of a character or by using the analog of a persona or some kind of artistic medium to help them navigate that themselves, because just sitting down and having to feel the feeling doesn't always work, especially in the moment. Speaking as someone who I'm a little bit different than this. I'm a
Yeah.
Scorpio moon in the first. So I don't feel my emotions right away. That's why I interview them, because I have to figure out what's going on. This person may
Yeah.
be able to express them in a more public way through something that they share with others. And by being able to do that and noticing that others also feel this, or that they can help other people feel something from what they do, can also help them process themselves.
Yeah, and I wanna sort of back up to say that you know this person, so we're using this as
Mhm.
stage analogies because this person does work in theater, I believe?
I'm acquainted with this person. I'm not
You're
close friends with them, so I'm not gonna claim that I know a lot of their personal life. I do know
Yes,
that, they have a theater background and, interests, and that they are an excellent photographer.
perfect. I only say this because if we didn't know this person, we would be asking a lot of questions, and, we're using these theater stage analogies because we know a little bit. We're not I
Well,
wouldn't just start talking about if I didn't know this
I
person,
would.
I'm this could read 1,000 different
Yeah.
ways.
I
We
would
don't
have
want
been
to like
using the stage analogy from the start for this one. I kind of like to start with that, more like emotionally attuned something and then narrow
yeah.
down with my clients. So that's definitely where I might have gone first. But you are
Yeah.
also
Oh,
correct.
I'm just gonna say we weren't
Within
just
it.
assuming this person is a theater life because when we're talking
Oh,
about, careers, I wanna make sure people aren't like, "Oh, so that, like, moon and Scorpio and the like, that this isn't some
oh,
sort of
no, not
signature
yeah,
for literally
yeah,
being in the theater." That's all I'm saying, just
yeah.
to be
No,
clear with everyone.
what we're doing here is sort of synthesizing into a sort of metaphorical hypothetical situation what the
Yes.
aloof Aquarius rising with the expressive Sagittarius sun and midheaven might be able to do with the Scorpio moon that is willing to be kind of recognized opposite that
Yeah.
Mars in the fourth, where it's like I'd almost prefer to be doing something in front of people where I don't have to be raw authentic. I can just
Yeah.
be authentic expression, and that's different. Yeah.
Also too, just like thinking of this, like riffing out loud, it also feels like it'd be a really good like, this would be a great, like, therapy chart, right? Like a
Mhm,
therapist, right? With all that
mhm. Oh,
12th
that
house
tells
and all
how
this shit and holds these difficult places, but also in a very, like, methodical way. And then that moon in Scorpio was like, "I really know how to sit and get messy with you," right? In a
Mhm.
way that's contained, right?
And I can
And
hold
that
space with
Jupiter
you and be seen with it, yeah.
yeah, and that, Jupiter in the 7th at one-on-one, which also now maybe I'll open this up. What I was thinking about
Mhm,
is thinking that, okay, so we have that Mars story, right? Ruler of the 10th house, is in a yeah, it's in a square. I can do astrology.
mhm,
It's in the overcoming square to the ruler of the 11th, which to me
mhm,
kind of further emphasizes there's some sort of conflict here, even between that, like, um, maybe between that sort of Mars whatever Mars story that is, it's kind of
mhm.
riffing between the 10th and the 11th here.
Yeah. I also do like, and we haven't said this
Yeah.
directly before, but we have acknowledged it, the, mutual reception between the Sun and Jupiter is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
There is
Uh-huh.
an aspect between them and all of that. So I think that also helps
It's a
support
beautiful
Jupiter.
aspect.
Jupiter here is also stationing direct because Jupiter is on that, or stationing retrograde. I correct myself. Stationing retrograde because Jupiter is in that trine with the sun. We know that he's either about to station or has stationed. And because we know that the sun is going to have an opposition, which is halfway through the retrograde phase for outer planets, we know that this is stationing retrograde. So again, this is something that is sort of taking things inward, which again would be a really great analysis of the ego with clients kind of topic. If this person did decide to pursue a sort of self-undoing for other people with other people.
Yeah, and also just this idea of it's an angular, it's a very loud Jupiter in the chart. And again, reemphasizing this idea between that Saturnian, I think of like, I can do this on my own, where that Jupiter is like, maybe this person sometimes, like, I don't know, what's coming up for me as we're talking, whatever this person chooses to do in their career, right? Because we get choice. It feels like that there's a little bit of like, okay, you need to take some risks and have the faith that it's going to be okay, right? There's something that's speaking really loud to that, whether it's like trusting to go out and that other people will support you, or trusting yourself to be vulnerable and be out in the world, right? Maybe there's some scariness that this person has to overcome. I mean, we all do, but particular in this chart.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's a lot of, I like to think of the 12th house as sort of untappable feelings at times. Like, your body is feeling something, but you can't quite put a pin in it. And so you look for ways that help you really draw that out. So asking for help and being able to have someone who can reflect with you is really useful, in forms of therapy or therapeutic methods. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I will also say, because I have been reading this book about the language of emotions, and because Sacred Spaces, where this person and I met, is so focused on mental health and spirituality, they are something that can go hand in hand. They should not be mutually exclusive, and one does not necessarily replace the other. You can do both. You can have a spirituality that feels expansive, expressive, and fulfilling, and also work with therapists and therapeutic practitioners, just as you would a medical practitioner, to make sure that that mental side is also nurtured.
Absolutely. This is kind of funny. I know you have some ancient texts that you brought out.
Yes.
But I also, I was like playing around with this book today, which is not an ancient text. Rudyard's The Astrology of Personality. It was funny. I was actually talking to Rick Levine, and he mentioned this book in a lecture. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go back and like read some Rudyard.
How did you get a Rudyard book, man?
Huh?
I said, how did you get a Rudyard book? I need to get one.
Oh, the internet. Very easy, actually. And I'm laughing because in this book, he lists the Sabian symbols, which, this is, I have mixed feelings. I think the Sabian symbols, I'm not looking at them for research in a chart, but sometimes they're really fun. They're like tarot, like a little form of divination to pull out and see what it says.
I think of them like asteroids. They really affirm on top of other testimonies. I like them.
Yeah, like sometimes they can be really random and sometimes they could just hit, right? Sabian symbols, I know that different people have done them there's different versions people have done throughout the years, but essentially, if I'm getting this right, a woman, and I forget her name, I apologize, essentially just like channeled these. They're like channeled visions, but they're one for every degree of the zodiac. So I will read the one, we round up here, right? So I'm going to read the one for 7 degrees Sagittarius, because that's where the midheaven is.
Yeah.
This is the cute sort of light fluffiness, and then we'll get into the deep stuff.
Also, really quickly, if someone's looking at the chart and saying it's 6 degrees, it's actually after 6, because it's 6 and 44 minutes, which is why Vivi is talking about the 7th, since these signs will start at 0 degrees. So I'm just rectifying some of the math there. Please continue.
Thank you. Yes, please. Great. Cupid knocks smilingly at the door of the human heart. Leo, right? The happiness which awaits every man willing to accept its fullness, rounding out of experience, the call to love's feast.
That's adorable.
It makes me think of like, there's something about this chart thinking that Aquarius rise. Sometimes Aquarius, I think, is a sign. It's hard for it to be embodied, right? There's always that sort of like fixed air perspective of I see everything going on. I'm constantly analyzing, right? What's the big moves? What are the new moves, right? There's that sort of top down sort of approach. Leo, of course, being so embodied. And I love it bringing out to me, it feels like that all again, thinking about that Jupiter Sun trine mutual reception, the chart in the 11th, there's something about like, oh, maybe it's that call to like be embodied and call to like, express love through your friends.
Honestly, I love that. And I'm going to go back to this. The one book I didn't quote for this was the language of emotions, because one of the things this person has learned to do is help people reintegrate with their emotional and physical bodies so that they can balance spirituality and reality, or at least the expression we're living in. So I think that that's a really great tie-in for, saying, hey, there's so much going on. Integrate yourself with all of the different facets. We love the mutability of Sagittarius with that one.
Yeah. So, and with that, do you want to now we'll go to the trickier text.
Yeah. So this one, now I got a quote from Maternus.
Every time you call Maternus, we have to boost ourselves up first.
Right? Like Maternus is a very cynical dude. Maternus does not have many nice things to say, especially when talking about planets that are considered to be the malefics, right? So Maternus goes to the nth degree and is like, what's the most drastic expression of this characteristic I can do? However, with the Aquarius quote, I thought he was actually pretty kind for about half of it. So for the person whose chart this is, yeah, Gabe gets it. For the person whose chart this is, just know this is what Maternus says, and this is the caricature of what an Aquarius rising would be. I just wanted to sort of speak to that rising sign that you're expressing. So so here we go. So according to Maternus, and you've heard us talk about this throughout, so you know that there are more psychologically and therapeutically kinder ways to say things in the modern era. But at the fall of Rome, here's how they would say this. If the ascendant is found in Aquarius, whatever he has acquired is torn apart again by some sort of losses, and whatever he has or seeks, he loses again. But whatever is lost is generally recovered in an easy manner. So this is kind of speaking to your maybe later in life, you actually get to reap the rewards of what you've built, even though there may have been some stumble along the way. Continuing, he will take on the task of helping many persons, and he will furnish life's support to many. And those for whom he has strongly done anything will be ungrateful to him. And being placed in grave danger and despaired of by all men, he is freed from it by the protection of the gods. So that's speaking to Aquarius again. Aquarius tends to be associated with the gods a lot. He's attacked by many persons with an envious screeching, so people get jealous of the Aquarius energy. Moreover, he will handle the duties of dealing with divine literature or sacred things or religions. And by his good acts, he will be known to great men. So that is Maternus in his book Methesis, which is in book 5, chapter 1.29, page 262, if you're interested. So basically, it's like this person, and we see this about Aquarius, right? Aquarius rising or Aquarius placements know their future sight is very active. So they can kind of think 7 steps ahead, and they're living in that moment. And the rest of the world is like, I'm not there yet, and can kind of feel like a rejection for that because they're not catching up with them and they're kind of dragging them back. But also there's the propensity for people to say, you are kind of ingenious. You have these forward thinking abilities and we're not ready for them yet. And we don't want to have to be ready for them yet. So rather than change, we'll just be mean about it, which does happen in life. Yeah, the world, I'm trying to sort of synthesize what we might see in a modern sense of what Maternus is saying. Yeah.
Oh, totally. And just building on that, I think when I think of Aquarius rising, I think of someone, I believe the musician Nina Simone has Aquarius rising, right? And so you see both, when you say catching up, I think that there's a sense of I don't know, I think of perspective, right? Like someone who's able to fixed air really see what's going on in the world, but maybe in a way that's not embodied. Like, oh, I see this. And also because I see this, I see that there's a new way of doing things. There is that sort of like
Mhm.
working with people on the level of like, I see what's possible for humanity.
Yeah.
But at the same time, right, that can bring a level of isolation when you're the one who's constantly looking at everybody and seeing, oh, wait, you can go there, you can do that, right? The director, right? Thinking about Aquarius in that
Mhm.
way. Um, it can feel lonely because you can't be the person who's directing and actually, I mean, you can, but it's a harder situation, right? It's hard to feel embodied sometimes, I think, with Aquarius
Mhm.
rising, right? And that's why we get
Yeah.
that level of both um, you can feel like an outsider at times, the sort of genius outsider, the duality of that.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got thoughts that other people aren't necessarily having. And I think Valens actually goes into calling Aquarius aloof as well, because
Mm,
there's so much going on over here, but you're living over here. And so you can feel to other people as though you're aloof, even if you are completely invested in something. And so I
yeah.
think, Aquarius has a very high level of being misunderstood by society simply because Aquarius is very much doing it their own thing and kind of living in a more, even if you take Maternus, living in a more spiritual reality and thinking about the possibilities of things and the higher concepts.
Yeah. Every time we talk about this Aquarius rising, I just keep looking at that Scorpio moon in the 10th and
Yeah.
feeling like that cathartic need for release, that maybe one way to like actually express and embody this is maybe through
Mhm.
this I want to say public display of emotion, but yeah,
Mhm.
public
Yeah,
display of emotion,
to
as you
feel
will.
as an outsider the emotions of a character or of, an
Yeah.
analog of some sort, even if it's reading books that make you
Mhm.
that kind of draw you in. Yeah, I just
Also,
realized
I
the time.
know yeah, with the last thing too, with like, I know that it from this quote, it wasn't meant, I mean, this isn't speaking directly to the ruler of Saturn being in the 12th, but there is also something monastic about this chart, right? Like time
Yeah,
alone. The 12th house
solitude.
also ruled the house of exile and monasteries. So maybe there
Yes,
is that sort of need for study,
space. Yeah,
space,
yeah,
both.
yeah. I like the study as well with the Capricorn, that makes a lot of sense,
Mhm.
especially with Mercury, in fact, being in Capricorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're running on time here. Where do you want I know you want to did you wanna mention a little bit of transits or to wrap this up?
No, I actually wove them in throughout. So just to sort of refrain, the person asking about what we would consider 10th house topics of career, that's so perfect because the 10th house is the sign that is perfected from their ascendant since their birthday on December 14th. So I would tell this person also, just really quickly, the ruler of your 10th house is Mars. So when we look at the rest of this year and timing for certain things this year, pay
Mhm.
special attention to Mars, who if we notice, when Mars does extra stuff, where can I get my transit by wheel? There we go. When Mars has a change in phase, so
Yeah.
let's just go with retrograde. This may bring changes in the direction of career focuses for this person. So if we go to the event coordinator here, we see that Mars does have a change of direction from December 6th to
Okay.
February 23rd of 2025. Mars will be retrograde. So at the end of this year, we can see that Mars is going to be going through Leo and Cancer. So that 7th house and the 6th house, there may be some research or some exploration of changing the day job at that point, or of
Mm.
focusing on health and other 6th house topics. But for this person, since they are focused on career this year, this retrograde happens just before their solar return. So there may be a period of them reevaluating what they do as a day job. And I've been telling people, like, take those extra days off around the Christmas holiday so that you can pretend
Yeah.
you quit. And then in that time, decide how that feels. And if you want to go back, go back. And if not, you can start making a good plan that will give you a solid way to transition into something new. So that's kind of where I would settle it there.
Ooh, I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and, you know, with my final advice for this person, right, when you're thinking about, career, right, it seems like this person's maybe, having one of these moments of, the very fixed problem of what do I wanna do for the rest of my life, right? It
Mhm.
feels very much like a fixed chart problem. You know, just to kind of stop. I love this idea of interviewing your emotions, but also just
Mhm.
kind of stopping back to go, what do all the parts of me need?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and when you're thinking about, you know, whether you want to start a new job or you're building out a business, whatever choices you have to make, I would really consider this person stopping and going, okay, like, what parts of me need to be fed? What parts of me are in conflict? And how do I resolve that?
Mhm. Agreed. I think that was beautifully stated. Yeah.
Thank
I am
you.
sorry that I
Yeah.
have to kind of rush off, but this was
Yeah.
awesome. It was so much fun. We're getting a lot of Aquarius risings in the comments validating
Yeah.
that this resonates with them as well. Hopefully the person whose chart this is, it resonates as well. To that person, since I know you are watching right now, we're going to email you a coupon code where you can get a free reading with each of us. So you
Yep.
get to dive into this even more deeply.
Yeah. And we will have a, oh, what's our code real quick this month? It's
I
for
just put
everyone
that
who's
into
watching.
AMA free. So it's AMA free for this person.
Okay.
And I'll
Are we doing
send you a
discount for
price
people
link,
who
but
are
I'm not
watching the
taking new
10%?
clients.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
don't take new
forgot. 'Cause you're
clients
going to
right
grad
now.
school.
Yeah.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I'm in grad school now. So yeah.
Well, I am. So if anyone wants to reading, come over here, people. No,
Yeah.
this is, I mean, yes. And
Yeah.
we will have thorough show notes, books and all that. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for your KristaLyn. And we'll see all of you next Monday. We're doing the same streaming platform. So you can join us here on YouTube and ask your own questions next week. Thank you.
Sounds amazing. Bye.
Bye.